right, good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody doing? Can I get a little more energy? Good afternoon. How y'all doing? Thank you. All right, so my name is Dr. Jonathan Cox, and I'm the Vice President for the Center for Policy Analysis and Research here with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. And I'm honored to welcome each and every one of you to the main stage here at CBCF's 53rd Annual Legislative Conference. Now, each September, CBCF provides this important forum to explore the challenges and opportunities faced by Black Americans and the global Black community. As the largest public policy conference in the nation, focusing on issues that are really important to Black communities, ALC operates as a hub of Black innovation, thought, and more importantly, action. Our conference theme, From Vision to Victory, Amplifying Black Voices, is a powerful and motivating call to action. The need to center and uplift the voices of Black people remains necessary, not only for our people, but for all peoples. History has taught us that when Black Americans do well, all Americans do well, be it social and economic empowerment or upholding civil rights and the ideals of democracy. Now, this is even truer as we enter into this important election year. In order for our vision to become victory, we must amplify our collective Black voices. In the Center for Policy Analysis and Research, we are deeply invested in our work towards the CBCF's mission to inform policy and educate the public. We remain committed to improving the social, political, and economic circumstances of Black Americans by providing timely, relevant analyses and policy recommendations that speak to issues that are of prime importance to Black communities. Now, this session that you're about to see is a manifestation of this work and this commitment. Now, today you're going to hear from thought leaders and change agents, community members, and practitioners who are all at the forefront of their fields and who are actively engaged in on-the-ground work to shift policy, perspectives, and the structures that guide individual and organizational action. We are grateful for their contributions, their expertise, and their time, not only for today, but for their ongoing efforts on behalf of their and our communities. I also wanted to take this opportunity to thank this session's sponsors, Albertsons, Fresenius, and Black Onyx Management. Aside from their gracious sponsorship of this important discussion, I thank all of them for their demonstrated commitment to issues of equity and equality. And now I would like to introduce one of our session sponsors, Pete Clark, the global head of hematofiltration therapy with Fresenius Medical Care, who will bring us remarks via video.
Coming today, and a special thanks to the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation for hosting this wonderful event. We appreciate the opportunity to participate. My name is Pete Clark, and I'm the global head of hematofiltration therapy for Fresenius Medical Care. Fresenius Medical Care is one of the largest providers of dialysis services in the United States for patients with end-stage kidney disease. About 550,000 Americans are currently in dialysis, and Black Americans are 3 times more likely to reach kidney failure compared to white Americans. We know that patients who experience unhealthy lifestyles and dietary patterns have higher rates of diabetes, hypertension, obesity, and chronic kidney disease. Driving this disparity are social factors that include reduced access to nutritious food, primary care, and quality housing. We believe policy strategies to address social determinants of health are crucial for improving patient health and reducing disparities. Food insecurity has been recognized as a key issue for patients on dialysis. At Fresenius Medical Care, we take steps to make sure our social workers and dietitians are connected to food pantries and local nonprofit organizations that help individuals obtain food, pay bills, maintain housing, and access community health services. We've also piloted innovative and successful local initiatives to address food insecurity. For example, dietitians in our DC area clinics partner with a local nephrologist to establish monthly community cooking classes for patients and families that focus on practical, budget-friendly meals that help patients achieve the best possible outcomes on dialysis. Today's panel will explore the historical significance of food in Black communities and highlight the ways in which cultural traditions and community knowledge can be leveraged to enhance health outcomes. As legislators look at policies to address health disparities, and improve health outcomes, we believe in a holistic approach that addresses the lifestyle factors that lead to illness. Key nutrition intervention strategies can slow the progression of kidney failure. We firmly believe education on healthy eating habits and expanded access to nutritious, affordable food can lead to better health outcomes. These are the topics we'll be exploring in today's panel, and I look forward to hearing from our distinguished panelists.
Thank you so much. And now it's my honor to introduce to you all of the speakers that will be on today's panel. First, we have Dr. Kara Niem Diop. She is the trailblazing nutritionist and the founder of The Black Nutritionist, a culturally affirmed nutrition platform. Through her dynamic Instagram presence, at Black Nutritionist, and over 12 years of experience, she advocates for holistic health and cultural heritage, specializing in nutrition practices tailored to Black women. Her mission is to revitalize and revolutionize nutrition by addressing colonialism and social justice, aiming to ensure marginalized communities are treated with respect and have equal access to nutritious and culturally relevant foods. She has been featured extensively in major publications, TV programs, and radio shows, which has solidified her status as a prominent voice in nutrition and health equity. She blends her Afro-Caribbean and Black French heritage with professional expertise to promote positive diets. Please join me in giving a round of applause to Dr. Niem Diop. Next, we have Chris Bradshaw. Chris Bradshaw was born in Tennessee and is the descendant of farmers, firemen, cooks, teachers, entrepreneurs, and farmers and survivors. Chris and his organization, Dreaming Out Loud, sees the food system as a lens to examine and dismantle systems of oppression and lead towards Black liberation. He is a frequent speaker on the intersections of racial justice, class, gender, and food sovereignty, with appearances at the Atlantic Ideas Festival and the Bloomberg American Health Summit. Chris is also one of Eating Well magazine's 2021 American Food Heroes, was selected to the Root 100 list of most influential Black Americans, and serves on the leadership team of the National Black Food and Justice Alliance. Join me in welcoming Chris. Next, coming to the stage, we have Dr. Psyche Williams-Forson. Dr. Psyche Williams-Forson is a professor and chair of the Department of American Studies at the University of Maryland, College Park. She is an author of Eating While Black, Food Shaming and Race in America, which was the winner of the James Beard Media Award of Food Issues and Advocacy in 2023. Dr. Williams-Forson is also the co-editor of Taking Food Public, Redefining Food in a Changing World and Building Houses Out of Chicken Legs, Black Women, Food, and Power, which was the winner of the American Folklore Society's Ellie Congas Miranda Prize. She is known nationally and internationally for her work in building the scholarly subfield of Black food studies and has been interviewed on several mediums, including Al Roker's Family Style on NBC Today and Netflix's Ugly Delicious. And finally, we would welcome, oh yes, go ahead, join me, thank you. And so finally, our last panelist for this afternoon session is Chef Alexander Smalls. Now, Chef Alexander Smalls is a James Beard Award-winning chef. He's an author and restaurateur and was the visionary co-owner of renowned restaurants The Cecil and Minton's. Over the past 3 decades, the chef and restaurateur has traveled the world studying and cooking techniques and foodways of the African diaspora and has received great acclaim in the restaurant scene. The Cecil, New York City's first Afro-Asian American restaurant, was named Best New Restaurant in America by Esquire in 2014. Smalls has authored many books, including Grace the Table, a memoir and cookbook, and Between Harlem and Heaven, which received a James Beard Award. He has twice served as the celebrity chef judge on Top Chef, one of my favorite shows, and he has appeared on The Chew with Carla Hall and NBC's Today Show. Smalls was also featured chef and author at the first ever New York Times Food and Wine Festival in 2019. So let's give it up for all of our panelists. All right, so I'm very excited to be sitting here with you all. I feel like I'm sitting amongst a lot of greatness, a lot of knowledge, a lot of information. This is gonna be a fantastic session. And so I wanted to start off this discussion by just talking about our rich food history, the rich food history of Black people. This is a history that most people don't fully know, right? And so I wanted to start off with this question of how have the agricultural knowledge and culinary traditions that were brought by enslaved Africans, how has that shaped American food practices? And how can this rich history be better acknowledged and celebrated in contemporary food? We can start with any of our panelists that wanted to start with that. Come on, Dr. Psyche, you look like you got some things you want to say. You can just go ahead and
Hello,
speak.
hello.
Oh, it's on?
It's
Okay.
on. Mhm.
Thank you for that question, Jonathan. So the rich food history of African Americans particularly, but Africans throughout the diaspora, did not start with scraps. Let's start there. Okay, enslavement lasted several centuries, and most often when you hear people talk about scraps, you're talking about the 1800s. Um, However, in the research I've done, and many of the folks on this panel have done, we know that African people and then African Americans had access to lots of different things. Whether or not they actually ate those things is another question. Because we have to remember we were brought here for our agricultural knowledges, for our husbandry, for our abilities to work with indigo and dye and plant rice. So there's no way in the world you could tell me that Africans can come to this country and be surrounded by foliage and porridges and wandering birds and muskrat and beaver, etc., and have plant knowledge. And we just absolutely did not take advantage unless it was out of resistance and our desire not to be alive in the bondage to which we were subjected. So I just wanted to always want to start there because there's a lot of danger in a single story. As Chimamanda Adichie, Nigerian novelist, says, there's a lot of danger and there's a lot of power in a single story, both for black people and for non-black people. Because as Kara Walker, the artist, said, where would we be without the struggle, right? But that's only a part of our lives. Just a part of our lives is the struggle. We also have to think about the ingenuity, creativity, and resistance.
Would anybody else like to add?
Yes, thank you so much. And I'm happy that you're saying this because as someone who works a lot with people to help them improve their eating habits and provide nutrition that is rooted in culture, that is something I hear a lot from them. But our food is from scraps, so we can eat that. And something I would like to say is that now African American food culture is start to be recognized a little bit, but when it comes to health and nutrition, there is always a but. So, okay, it's phenomenal, it's innovative, it's delicious, but we shouldn't eat too much of this. And so it's something that I am actually working on is about how can we improve our eating habit by letting go this shame, the shame that we've developed about our own cultural food. And it's been pretty a fascinating experience because as someone who grew up in an African and Caribbean household, I almost accidentally discovered African American food culture by accident. I never heard about it before I came here 6 years ago. Never heard about it. And it was a very emotional experience when I was brought a plate that was familiar. It was just cooked differently with different spices. And that's how I knew, okay, there's really something to be done about that culture. And it's really often dismissed or put aside, but it actually need to be centered. And so, yeah, I wanted to add that.
Absolutely. We can go ahead. I just want to also, if we could get all of us to speak as closely to the mic as possible, I think that's helpful for everybody in terms of hearing. But either Chef Alexander or
Well,
Chris.
are you all right?
I'm good. Just a little dry mouth. I'm going to get some water.
So listen, I echo the wisdom of my two panelists, and they both touched on some very important points from foundationally who we are and also from, being plagued by a sense of shame, which is a big part of our culinary expression and labels that have been put upon us. But I want to say first and foremost is that enslaved Africans were brought to this country to be the foundation of agriculture and build an industry that did not exist and had really nowhere to grow and go based on the Europeans. And they expertly did this by seeking out Africans with specific specialties, trades, ability to essentially, I'll take the crop rice, and it's very much akin to me because my family is Gullah Geechee, and whether you know this or not, rice built the South. Rice essentially made Charleston, South Carolina, the richest city in the world. And it was enslaved Africans who grew that product, laid the foundation for that wealth, and did not benefit in any way whatsoever. There's an interesting article out that I'm featured in by Food and Wine magazine on the story of rice and the city that it built. I participated on an interesting panel at the annual family reunion held at the Salamander every year, third week in August, with Chef Kwame Onwuachi and Sheila Johnson, Food and Wine magazine. We are in our fourth year, and we had an extraordinary discussion on the power of Africans and rice and raising the economic level of these new United States. So we're taking that discussion to Charleston at the end of the month for, again, another first. Food and Wine magazine is doing their food festival there. But essentially, we are in the process, and it's incumbent on all of us to participate, reclaiming our value, our identity, retelling our story so that it not only makes sense, but it's truth. It's truth spoken to power. And we can do that uniquely through our food because for African Americans, for enslaved Africans all over the world, and for Africans generally, food is our language, it's our conversation, it's our legacy. When we didn't own ourselves, we owned that recipe. It was a source of dignity and pride, and we need to invest ourselves in that pride and dignity for the ancestors' sake and for our future and our children. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah. Chris, you want to jump in, or?
Yeah, absolutely. When I think about our food histories and our food stories, I also think about them as technologies and as tools. A tool for our collective liberation, a tool for repair, a tool for healing, a tool for new opportunities. I think about how powerful it is that those technologies, that knowledge survived, and I think about how it survived within my own family, surviving enslavement, then being released into the American South. I'm from Tennessee, but another branch of my family is from southern Georgia, northern Florida. And so they were sharecropping and farming there in those territories. And part of our family are survivors and refugees from the Rosewood Massacre. So I think about the fact that we had folks farming on the continent, that knowledge surviving, having that knowledge reproduce itself and establish itself in a community like Rosewood, but then having that physical land be taken from us, losing folks, surviving that pogrom and escaping to Georgia, where they reestablished more farmland, right? Letting those chains remain linked not just to the land, but to the history before we even got to America. And so I think about how powerful it is today to be able to transmit stories like that and what it might do for other folks in terms of learning your food history and learning how powerful food is as a lens and a tool within your own community and your own life.
Absolutely, right. And so, I think a lot of what you all are saying is really important, right? So we connected back to, obviously, the enslavement of Black Americans, right, of African people, those of African descent, to be able to make any of these things happen. I think it's also really important to recognize the impact of racism throughout history, right? Particularly when we think about the stories, right? Dr. Nyamdiap, you talked about this idea of like you didn't even know or you hadn't heard about certain things, right, before you came to the U.S. And started to learn about some of these things, right? And so, in what ways have the historical narratives that surround Black food, Black innovators, our contributions to cuisine, how has that been shaped by systemic racism, and how does that, and also cultural appropriation, right? How does that impact and affect the visibility and recognition of Black culinary innovators and Black culinary traditions?
Yes. What were you doing last Tuesday around 9 p.m.?
Sleeping almost, getting ready for bed.
I watched the debate. And I noticed something very interesting. How food habits of a specific group were used to dehumanize us. And I said, oh, wow. I really try not to make everything about food, but I feel everything is about food because I cannot believe he used the way we eat to dehumanize. It was specifically about Haitian immigrant, but I say, okay, there you go, once again. And I feel this is what I feel about the way racism has shaped the narrative around our food. It's that anything we do is wrong, and it needs to be corrected, it needs to be, at best, improved, healthified, but it's wrong. And you actually almost treat it as an animal because everything you do should be done differently. So I think it's a really strong narrative that you find throughout the food system, I feel. And I feel that in my field, in the nutrition field, is very strong. Because when I moved here and I was introducing myself as a nutritionist, people were like, oh, wow, I've never met a Black nutritionist. Or everywhere, every day I was hearing that. And that's how I call myself, the Black nutritionist. And then they came to me saying, okay, my doctor told me I need to stop eating, my rice and beans. I need to stop that. I need to eat less of the spicy food that I grew up eating. And it was every day. And so I realized, how strong and how comfortable healthcare providers or even people who don't understand the basic of nutrition and even more the culture feel comfortable saying, just stop, just move and eat something else. Eat the potato, eat, I don't know, the Mediterranean diet, but forget about everything you learn and everything you are. So yeah, I think that's...
Sure, yeah. So I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, and when you said cultural appropriation, I started thinking about how cultural appropriation precedes corporate appropriation, right? Nashville hot chicken. Everybody's seen it on a menu from McDonald's to Ruby Tuesdays, wherever it is. Man, that is a Black food tradition from Nashville, Tennessee. Places like Sweats is where we used to go get Nashville hot chicken around the corner from Tennessee State University, where my mom worked. Like, I think about those things, and I think about how the explosion of Nashville hot chicken and what type of revenue that's driving for someone's corporate profits, for someone who doesn't look like us, who's paying property taxes, buying homes, building generational wealth around a Black food tradition. I think about how as we examine experiences and things like that have happened, how do we work to protect the new traditions, the new things that are going to come out, so that we're the ones profiting from it. We're the ones building and giving back to our HBCUs, our churches and mosques or what have you, because it's going to happen again, right? We're a people that is constantly reinventing ourselves. We're constantly adding to the global culture. We're the ones who set trends. But if we're not in control of those assets, we can't build the things that we need for ourselves. And so as we're thinking about what's next in food, as we embark upon our own ventures, I really want to make sure we're safeguarding our new food traditions, our new opportunities for ourselves.
Well, I'll go one or two better than that. You talk about the Tennessee fried chicken. Let's just start with Uncle Ben and Aunt Jemima. I mean, we don't have to look far to see, Colonel Sanders. We don't have to look far to see how corporate America has repackaged our Blackness, essentially telling us how horrible and creating shame around our table, but then absolutely repackaging it and sending it back to us, sanitized and blessed by their almighty dollar. Racism, is essentially a weapon to empower condescension, negative expression around black and brown people globally. It is in the DNA of the constitutional expression, if you allow, because the corporate arena sets the course and the table for all of us. And in doing so, they also created food deserts for underdeveloped and impoverished communities. Again, another way of cutting off the resources and sources of black folks feeding themselves. When you think about slavery, for example, and you think about essentially enslaved Africans who came here to build this country and the wealth of the soon-to-be corporate folks in this country, these people were not fed. They had to feed themselves. They were given land, and if you work the land, then you get to eat. And you worked that land before you worked the master's land, or after you did, even into the wee hours of the night. If you didn't grow your crop, you did not eat. So essentially, their purpose and goal and their diet was based on what they grew. And then, this whole concept of the big house throwing out scraps, coming back to that term, and with the ingenuity of enslaved Africans, they took that to put protein in their food, to make gravies, to do things that expanded their diets. But essentially, they grew their food. So then you build urban deserts and you cut them off from their food source, and everything they eat comes out of corporate America in a can that has been processed, filled with salt. Essentially, nutrients have been cooked out of it, and you think, oh, what a horrible diet these people have, by design.
I'm going to go one step further back for just a moment. We're not talking about foreign people here. We're talking about your grandmothers, your great-grandmothers, your great-great-grandmothers, our great-great-grandpeople, right? Who, long before Uncle Ben's and Prince's and so forth and so on, you had the women of Gordonsville, Virginia, who would prepare food and then take it to the train tracks and sell it to the white folks who passed by on the trains before refrigeration. You also had the Arabers of Baltimore and others like them who would go around and sell food out the back of their trucks. You also, of course, had the pepper pot ladies of Philadelphia. So my point is that all of our point is that these things were part of who we were. The food we grew, the food we bartered, the food we shared, the food we sold. And it was by design, white supremacist system, which has always been in place, which is why most of us are here, which shut those enterprises down, adopted them, and renamed them into Nashville Hot Chicken. So we're not talking about something foreign to you. We're talking about our people, our relatives in our family, many of whom you might not even know these stories about. Don't let that escape as our elders pass on.
Absolutely, right. I'm so glad we just got to hear some things about, food deserts, right? The ways in which there's a design to the lack that exists for many black communities, right? And so you also, Dr. Saki, just talked about this idea of what black women in particular and other black folks were doing, historically to help to meet the needs when that lack was there, right? And so if we're moving to present day, what are some innovative solutions that you all are seeing now that are being developed to help address food insecurity issues in black communities, given that 19% of black households experience food insecurity as compared to only 10% of white families? right? What things are being done now to help address some of these issues?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot that's being done, and I think some of the first important steps are framing what's happening in the right terms. So we actually don't say food deserts at Dreaming Out Loud. We talk about food apartheid. Absolutely. And Mama Karen Washington, who's a food system leader, Black women always leading, who coined that term. And so that's our framing. It has to do with that intentional construction that you mentioned, just as poverty is an intentional construction. And so when we're looking at food insecurity, it's a justice issue and it's an economic issue, but it's all tied back to those vicious historical legacies, right? Chattel slavery, redlining, Jim Crow, all those things that produced a Rosewood, that produced a situation here in the district where there's only 3 grocery stores for more than 150,000 people, mainly Black folks in Ward 7 and Ward 8. So some of the things that are being done. Wanda is an incredible organization. My friend Tambra Ray Stevenson sitting up front, leading Black nutritionists, Black women agriculturalists. Dreaming Out Loud, we are a farm, a food hub, and an incubator. So we're innovatively weaving these things together, trying to recreate what a just food system would look like, and hopefully being able to grow that. We have 2 farms. We also, as a food hub, work with other farmers across the region to help get their produce and products into schools, hospitals, other nonprofit programs, because there's a much larger economy around the food system beyond restaurants, beyond the things that we think of as or beyond grocery stores even. There's institutional food, and there are people making fortunes. They're multi-billion-dollar, multinational companies making money off of our family that are incarcerated. There's so many different layers to the way that others' economic development and growth, and even their ability to then leverage those dollars to lobby to maintain their profit centers, impact our communities. And so we have to unpack the different layers and talk about the food system at different levels. So we're in the process of building a 4,700 square foot food hub and grocery store in Ward 8 on Marionberry Avenue. Many of us know Marionberry. I hope many of us will take the time to learn more about Marionberry than what they tell us about Marionberry. So Marionberry was a SNCC organizer, born in Mississippi, raised in Memphis, like my sister Jaren right here. And he came to DC, eventually became mayor. But one of the major shifts that he was able to make was he was able to shift contracting from more than 80% of the contracts, DC government contracts used to go to white firms. But by the time he left office, 47% of those contracts were going to Black folks. He helped create the Black middle class here in the district, created Black wealth, more policy tie-ins that were deeply connected to food. He also pushed legislation that established community gardens. So we have to continue to build upon the histories that other folks have set for us and come up with new innovations that push things forward.
And I think it's really important that we support organizations like Chris's. We may have our own individual plot to grow your own food, but I also want us to think on a micro level, right? It's okay to just grow on your balcony in a container. It's okay to just grow on your windowsill if that's what you want to do. It's okay not to have to grow your own food as well. Part of what I talk about in Eating While Black, food shaming and race in America, is exactly how the white system and supremacy has made us feel ashamed about any and everything we do, when we need all of it. We need Chef Small's restaurant. We need to grow our own food. We need to cook our own food. We might need to patronize a fast food establishment because our family member works there. We need to look at dollar stores and Dollar Tree as viable food sources, and not only for ourselves, but for our families and for those who are on a limited income. Do not think for one moment a grocery store is your friend, because if it shuts down, then what, right? So we need all of this. Some of us grow, some of us harvest, some of us plant, some of us cook, some of us sell, some of us are creative ingenues, if you will, in whatever realm. But we don't need to close off anything, nor do we need to shame people nor do we need to shame people for the way they access food. That is not a part of a Black liberation agenda. And I would like to believe that if we're here today, we are all a part of a Black liberation agenda. Let's stop shaming our people around food.
Amen. Chef Smalls, I would love to get you in here as well, because we know that oftentimes owners of restaurants, Black owners of restaurants, are deeply involved in helping to solve some of these issues with regards to food insecurity.
Well, one of the things I'd like to add, because I fully endorse what my panelists have said, and the most important step is enlightenment. We all need to understand the value of our food system and our history with food, which has been expressed on this panel many, many times. But we need to be educated. Food is not just something that we go to the refrigerator and take out and satiate ourselves and then on to the next thing. It is our legacy. It is who we are. It is the fabric of our history. We were brought here to do this. For us to be walking around today without the understanding of how we got here, the role food plays, and the opportunity for all of us to play the role in preserving not only our food system, but our people. It's a community effort. It's grassroots. So I encourage everybody to engage in the organizations that's helping to get this message out, to bring clarity, but also to have a sense of personal pride that you can own in your participation. As a restaurateur, I've had 5 critically acclaimed restaurants in New York City. I opened the first African food hall in the world, 22,000 square feet, 12 different concepts in Dubai 4 years ago. My mission has always been to make sure not only we had a seat at the table, but we were foundational at that table and understood that who we are and our food practices essentially built the damn table. And in that mission, it has taken me first from, promoting the foods of the Gullah Geechee people, my heritage, with 3 restaurants in New York, the first fine dining African-American restaurant in the early 90s, and I built it in the most popular white community Manhattan has, Lower Park Avenue. And it changed everything. But the point is that we have to be present, engaged, involved, and driven, mission-driven, to make sure that our history and our foodways can sustain and thrive in this assault that has been waged. We're in a war, if I just put it bluntly, for our survival and for our history and foodways. That's ours. So what restaurants are doing, we did a sustainability conference in Dubai last December, talking about how restaurants can, participate and sort of lead the charge in that front. One of the things I used to do at my restaurant in Harlem is sponsor meals for charitable organizations, feeding the homeless. We did a lot of holiday feeding. There was a particular organization in the building I was in that we fed once a week. And we made sure that our products were recycled into the community to help those less fortunate. That provides us with a community initiative. And if you take nothing else away, you have to rise to the occasion that this is urgent for all of us to be engaged in.
Absolutely. And so, at this point, we've talked a bit about, some of the different issues that exist around access to knowledge of healthy foods, right? And so I wanted to shift gears a little bit and briefly talk about some of the specific ways in which Black food traditions are used to actually enhance Black health and the health of Black communities. And so what can each of you highlight about Black food practices that promote positive, healthy outcomes for Black people? And I'm also really interested in the connections between the historical ways that we've done this and the ways in which contemporary chefs maybe are, and food practitioners, right? Those who are cooking food for us. How are we? Can we tie that from the history to what's happening now with new innovations?
Yeah, so when it comes to health and healthy practices, I think it's very important to remind everyone that we know that better than everyone. And I want to take a minute to say that because I was taught in school that black people don't eat fibers. Black people don't eat, and I was shocked, and I still hear that. But black people don't eat fibers. If you just look at the way we cook the sauce, for example, so I hear that black people don't eat, Africans don't eat fibers. If you look at the serving of vegetable we have in our sauce, you solve, you actually have the amount of fiber you need in a day, the recommendation. But because the providers and the people don't know our culture and don't understand our dishes, they're not able to provide um, that coaching, that nutrition coaching. And so that, for example, something that is very important and that I use a lot when I work with people, showing them how, in the sauce you have the identity, you have the fibers, and we need to keep it in our plate. Also, now we're talking about, plant-based eating. We're talking about plant protein. This is basically our culture. We just really high in beans, in legumes, and a little, oh sorry, and less meat. And that's something that if you look at our traditional recipes throughout the diaspora, that's exactly what we've been doing. And when it comes to health and wellness, I think it's not just nutrients, it's also the way we eat, the way we relate to food. For example, the tradition of eating communally, even in a communal plate, that is so powerful in terms of nutrition. If you think about the fact that we currently live in food abundance, even if we have issues of food access, this is food abundance. And so people who are actually successful in building healthy eating habits are the ones who knows how to regulate their food intakes. And if you look at when people eat communally, there is not a plate, a defined plate. They know because they've learned how to connect with their internal signal. They know when to stop eating. And that's something we talk a lot about, okay, the portion are big in the United States. That's true. But I think when you teach people, it's something I use with my clients, it's something I use with my kids. We eat in a communal plate because they're learning to know when they're hungry. It's not based on the plate, it's not based on the portion, it's based on your own faculty, your own body. And that's something I took from, because my husband is Senegalese, and I saw the way they were eating and used that tradition and injected in my own nutrition coaching. So I think I wanted to say it's not just nutrient, it's also the way we connect to food, the way we connect with the people who cook and who also grow the food.
Any other panelists want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll hop in. So, in the fall of 2022, the Biden administration had a conference called the White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health. And one of the terms that came out of that conference was a term called food is medicine or food as medicine. And it's a term that the more healthcare companies and other even startups that are focused on utilizing the food system to make profits, were utilizing and taking and co-opting around basically feeding black folks, feeding poor folks healthy, nutritious food as a way to decrease the number of incidences that folks are admitted to the hospital with, right? It's all profit driven. But we've already and always known that food is medicine, right? We've always used the earth, used the land to heal ourselves, whether it was herbally or what have you. And so for me, when I'm thinking about like how do we make some shifts and reverse co-opt some things, we've been thinking really heavily about how to reverse co-opt food as medicine, right? So that rather than someone telling us what food as medicine is, we're dictating what it looks like on the ground in our communities and being able to utilize the resources that are flowing into this conversation, into these medical companies, into the MCOs. How do we use that for building out the future that we see? right? So that's like, how do we source that produce from black farmers? How do we put together, a fund to help black folks get land, help farmers retain land? How do we make sure that if we're preparing medically tailored meals, that those chefs from within our community are the ones that are benefiting? Those small food companies are the ones that are making it, right? But it requires a lot of different shifts, right? We talk about there's no grocery stores, or not many grocery stores east of the river, but there's also not a lot of food production spaces. If you're a small black food maker, where do you go? There aren't shared kitchen spaces. And so when we're thinking about solutions and innovation and how to tie things in together, building on history, but also building that physical infrastructure and bringing community ownership into the picture, that's the kind of things we want to do with the Marionberry Avenue Market that I mentioned, is to make sure that that's shared kitchen space for black food producers, where black farmers can bring their produce, so that when those food as medicine contracts are coming out, we're all in position to collectively put that bid in, right? To keep those venture capital-backed startups that are going after multi-million-dollar contracts and then doing the same thing again, building their generational wealth, buying another home, investing in the lobbying to keep those resources flowing into their pockets. Let's reverse that so that we're even stronger here next year and the year after. So we're driving home the points and the policies that we need to benefit our communities. So that's what I think about when you're talking about nutrition.
Yeah, just very quickly, and I would say once we get past Chris's part, which is the production, then some of us can also work with people in communities, not to necessarily say, hey, you have to have a juicer or you have to have a blender, but showing people how they can make the food as medicine at home and eat in a way that is going to help combat the stress, combining ginger and whatever else, all of these things, so that we're doing something within our homes after we've purchased the products that have been farmed for us and then produced for us toward food as medicine.
Yeah, and I would love to dig a little bit more and hear something from Chef Smalls, because we had the opportunity to see you do a little bit of cooking with Chef Huda earlier today over on the culinary stage, and you had some really great advice and thoughts for people about even how they're preparing their own food at home or what their plate should look like that is going to help them kind of utilize their food as medicine in these ways.
Well, the first thing I would say, we have to stop demonizing our food. We have got to stop thinking that there's something wrong with the African diet and the foods that are ours. We are the only race of people who are constantly being demonized on every level, saying how our food is so bad, et cetera, et cetera. The idea that we would have a cuisine that went past soul food was unacceptable to so many people. How do you put it on a fine dining plate? It's not good for you. This is a myth. This is a myth that was trumped up for the reasons the people trumped it up. And we, coming back to that whole concept of shame, and we adopted all of this. This is the problem. And I'm not a doctor, but I'm someone that's been on the planet and been a few places. And I've worked in this field with food for a long time. And what I would say to you, the problem is the psychology of food for black people. Our psychology, the way we approach, because of slavery, because of poverty, which has been imposed. Because once slavery was abolished, poverty didn't go anywhere. There were a few breaks here and there, but it has been imposed upon us. We eat with an impoverished mentality. We're either eating like it's our last meal, and we don't know when we're going to eat again, or we're eating from a place of this is my only pleasure. And so let me just eat all the things I love. So if you sit down and eat, a bowl of macaroni and cheese and fried fish, fried every day, you are abusing our brilliant diet. But you're abusing out of a psychological need to fulfill something else. And we have to get to the foundation of that as a people so we can eat like most people for nourishment, for enjoyment, but not desperation. So we have to move from a desperation diet to one that complements. And I'm just full disclosure. I just took 6 inches off my waist. It took me this long to do it. It took me this long to know that I needed to do it and should do it. I didn't stop eating our food. It wasn't necessary. I applied a new attitude to eating. And the rest and the body took care of itself. It it gave me what I needed. And to do I was able to lose those 6 inches. I said earlier today about a plate, the whole concept of a circle. You divide that plate in half. On one side of that plate are all of your vegetables, your salads, all those things that, and also full of fiber. I suggest everybody, when you're having a salad, also thinly sliced cabbage. You need that fiber. It'll also make you think you eat more food. But half that plate should be about that. I'm not in nutrition. I hope I'm not big about those. That's not the point. But then you have another half circle. Then 1/3 of that circle, for me, became my protein. And I mean lean protein, fish, beef. I mean, I haven't stopped eating anything I love. And I'm a chef. And that other portion was left for my carbohydrates. And it was enough. But also it taught me how to understand what the food that I put in my body is doing and how it functions and how to eat a balanced meal as opposed to just piling up a plate as high, going to all you can eat buffet and then wondering why, you're falling out of your pants. So I'm saying that it all starts with how we mentally, psychologically approach the whole blessing of sitting and eating and enjoying your food. If we can correct and get that in balance, I think we can go a long way.
Yeah, and I just wanted to build up on this because I talk about this all the time. It's called the relationship with food, what you just mentioned. It's much more than what you put in your body. It's your whole relationship with food. And you mentioned a lot of concepts that exist, which is the Last Supper syndrome. We talk like that. You also talk about the scarcity mindset that makes you not eat more than you actually need because you think it's called the Last Supper syndrome. And this is very important. And it's something I've been, advocating a lot, talking about, it's important to build a positive relationship with food. And that's the foundation of healthy eating habits. And as Black people, we had a long, rich history, but also painful history around our food habits. And especially if we are raised by parents who went through food scarcity, who didn't have enough, they also gave us some of these habits, like cleaning our plate. It's one of these habits that we really need to think about a little more. And that has a big impact on the way we nourish ourselves. And it's very important to talk about this. So yeah, I'm very happy that he mentioned this.
Absolutely. And so we're almost out of time here. And so what I wanted to do is just ask a final question to get everybody's thoughts on this. And so looking to the future, how can Black communities' rich culinary traditions be preserved and celebrated while also promoting healthier diets that we've been talking about today? Second thought, who wants to hop in first?
I think we need to be, so you mentioned something that it's a war, and I do feel it. You need to be vocal, you need to shout, you need to talk about it over and over again, and don't feel no shame, but yeah, to me it's that. It's really reclaiming that narrative and say it with a lot of confidence. And it's just the beginning, we're just starting, and I really hope we're gonna, and to me, having behind me chefs, historians, sociologists that also back this up with facts is really helpful, because now I can say, okay, it's just me making this up. This is the history, this is the facts, these are the facts. And so yeah, that's.
Chris, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think about preservation on a couple different levels. I think it is preserving things intellectually, like literally digitizing recipes, keeping those family traditions and recipes in the family, sharing those as much as you can, but making sure it's preserved in terms of intellectual property. I would also say preservation in terms of just holding space for the pure joy of it, the connection of it. That's the most essential part of it. If we lose that, then we're losing the soul and the essence of our food. Baba Tariq Oduno, one of our elders, a legend across black food spaces across the country, always said there's no culture without agriculture. We have to remember that. And our other food traditions are a part of that, and we have to preserve it.
Yeah, so when I sign books, when I have the good fortune and pleasure of signing books, I always sign them eat, enjoy. So I really appreciated what you said, Chef Smalls, about getting away from attacking our food and disliking our food. I've actually been up here taking notes. And I liked what you said about we eat like we're impoverished, right? Instead of eating in joy. Eating in joy. And I think social media has actually helped us a lot to see the plethora of things that black people eat and the joy we have in preparing them and the wonderful ways that we can do it. And so to an extent that social media is a positive thing, I think that it has been that way for me at least. And so I think that when we consider how we come at our food, the ways we eat, and remember the ways that those before us prepared food, planted food, etc., and recognize this is not a new story, and just take a different approach to the ways in which we get with food.
Chef Smalls, you could close us out with final comments. I think you may even have something coming out next month that might speak specifically to this.
Well, I've run my mouth forever here, but I'll just leave you with a final thought, really. Celebrate the African table. Celebrate our food culture. Put yourself in joy when you eat and understand the richness and what that African American or that African table means to who we are as African people. Eat with joy and love. Don't abuse it. Enjoy it.
All right, well, I want to thank our panel so much. If you could give them a round of applause. And thank you all so much for attending this session. We really appreciate it, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.